While I was deployed in Kosovo, my team did a lot of night missions that required us to cover a great deal of ground in a short period of time in order to make our extractions, all of it while remaining undetected by anyone in the areas that we would pass through. We would always seem to see odd things during the night, but nothing like this. During one of our recon missions, we had started by getting dropped off in a remote location to identify whether shipments of mortar rounds and mines were being moved through the area. Our extract was going to be before daybreak, and we needed to make it just over 17 kilometers. The terrain wasn't too overgrown because we had good intel over the area, and it was neither a full moon or close to it. I don't remember for this story, but unless we encountered somebody, this was going to be an easy night. Our team was normally only 4 men, but we had an opportunity to make this a good training run from some of the new guys and took on an extra 3. We still wanted to make it sure we played safe though, so I took rear security. We'll call this guy L, and he took the position just in front of me. We both worked great together, and we could easily manage to cover our team if needed. We moved about 10,000 through our mission area without finding anything, and had made good time doing it. At this point, we needed to start heading to our extraction point, which was located over a good-sized hill, and then through an area that was near a village, but not too close. We regrouped, did a count of people, ammo, and supplies, and moved out. Being rear security, I was the last to move, and just as I was about to take off, I heard a noise in the trees maybe about 50 meters. Everyone else was still moving, since the new guys were in the middle, and were not used to looking back every 20 meters to spot your security. We were just getting left. Chances were that noise was nothing more than a deer, but Elle and I started moving out, using a 2-man bounding technique. We kept hearing a noise, so I told Elle to reach the team, while I remained in place for our next bound. I found a place with cover and he bolted after the team. I heard the noise again, then saw the trees move about 15 meters in front of me. Everything stopped. 2 minutes went by, and with me being very quiet, controlling my breathing and watching the front sides, Elle and my team were slowly making their way to engage whatever had been following us. They came up on sides and surrounded the area I signaled to. Once in position, I moved up. Nothing. Not footprints, not tracks, or any sign that anything had been there. Cue the guys giving Elle and I a hard time for getting left alone and scared. All good-hearted and fun, of course. We move out again. Again, I'm the last to move, with Elle between myself and the next man to the front. This time, no noises when I step away. After about 2K, we come up to an orchard that we need to move through. The light from the moon was really bright and the trees were spaced, so we used them for cover as we stayed near the middle of the orchard. Just before I enter, I hear the noise again. This time, I thought I heard a little girl giggling. Not something that my imagination would make up on its own. I was expecting wildlife, if anything. This time, Elle had taken off an additional 20 meters and turned to wait for me. I moved to my location and he moved out again. I was crouched next to a tree watching for anything, but all of a sudden, the tree I was next to caught my attention. In the knots on the tree, I could see a face that looked like a person. As I squinted and looked more closely, a little girl's face appears. She turns at me, smiling, waving a little hand and giggles. Not maliciously, but she disappears back into the tree. I'm in absolute shock at this point, and there's no chance I'm going back to my team to report what I just saw. So instead, I bolt and I catch up to Elle to keep my mouth shut. Recognizing that I had likely lost my mind, I'm not going to talk about anything. We just hit our extract and we leave. 2 weeks go by, and I am told that I'm needed to provide security for a team of combat engineers who are going through an area that I'm familiar with. In the meantime, my team and I were going to be going through the area that we were in 2 weeks ago where Elle got scared and everyone laughing again. Again, I never said a word to anyone about what I saw. In my mind, I'm actually quite happy about not going back there. So I go out with the engineers and help them find a minefield that had recently been laid, and they take care of informing the village nearby while starting to blow the mines in place. I get back and I'm taken to see a commander and told thanks for the work. Feeling great, I head back to my barracks and see that none of the guys are back yet. No sooner than taking my boots off, the door opens and I hear everyone laughing as they enter, but Elle is not laughing and telling everyone to stop. One of the other guys sees me and blurts out, "Hey man, Elle says he isn't going on patrol with us anymore in your favorite spot. I just grimace and I wait for stuff to calm down. A couple of days later, Elle and I are playing babysitter to some scouts. He says, "What did you see that night?" I shrug and I say, "I don't know. Just my imagination getting the better of me." Then he says something that sends chills up my spine. "I know you saw her. I saw her too. Tell me I'm not crazy." I felt numb. I just said, "You're not crazy. Where did you see her?" He replied, "Inside of a tree." I had never given any information to Elle about what I saw, or even details that could have led for him to come up with the same conclusion. When I saw the girl in the tree, Elle was 40 meters away from my location, and there's no way he could have seen even me looking at the tree. So my uncle used to work a lot when I was a younger kid. He's done a lot of different things to make money, but one consistent thing is that in the summer months and late into fall, he paints houses. It's a legitimate business and everything. He's got a truck with a number, name, and supplies in the back, the works. And every now and then he would call my dad when he needed a little bit of extra help, and I'd also help. No big deal really, it's just painting houses. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it takes quite a while to paint a whole house. If the weather conditions aren't right, then you can't paint. One particular fall, it was extremely wet. It rained what felt like every single day. My uncle would paint multiple houses at a time, so sometimes he would get caught up due to situations like these, and I'd work a little more than usual. That was fine by me though. The job wasn't that hard and it paid pretty well. Anyway, it was a warm day for late fall, but there was still a distinct chill in the air. One that kind of penetrated through you and stung your soul. My uncle had this job that he had to finish. It was an old Victorian house in a quiet part of town. A lady and her husband, who was an author, lived there. Due to the weather, it had taken longer than expected to paint that house, and there were some family issues going on, so that made it harder. So my uncle gets a call one day from the lady who lives at the house. She says that her husband is trying to write his next book, but he keeps getting distracted by the scaffolding outside the house. So she wanted to know if we could come over and finish the job as soon as possible. My uncle was always an honest businessman. They had contracted him to do the job in midsummer, but he had lots of jobs that summer, and the wet conditions I mentioned above made it difficult to finish anything. However, these people were insistent but really polite, and not wanting to lose customers, my uncle decided to put the house as a high priority. After all, it would only take like a day or two to finish. So we show up to his house like mid-afternoon. Like I said, it was kind of weird and chilly that day, and I also remember a really eerie, calm-ish. The day was slightly overcast, so everything was shrouded in gray. It was like the perfect setting for some kind of mystery crime novel. So we arrived at this house, and my uncle and I moved to the back. The front of the house was already done, and there was nothing left there. My uncle, being the more experienced painter, would always do the touch-ups, and I would simply apply the first coats, since they took very little skill. Anyway, we get back to the house, and he asked me if I'm scared of heights. I was 17 at the time, and although they do creep me out a little bit, I didn't want to seem like a child in front of my uncle, so I told him that I wasn't at all. He was very happy to hear that. He had me climb up the scaffold to the 3rd floor to finish an upper section of the house. There was a window up there, a small little oval one that looked into the attic. The attic also happened to be the husband's study. He would do most of the writing in there. So I'm climbing up the scaffolding, cans of paint dangling behind me, and various paintbrushes and other tools. I get to the top of the scaffolding and set my supplies down. Crack open a can of paint, and I start painting like a few hundred times before. Outside of the temperature, the overcast, and the eerie calm this day, it was like any other. I'm working my way across the top part of the house when I get to the window that looks like the study. I bend down, dip my paintbrush, and stand back up to paint above the window. The window was in my direct line of sight, and I couldn't help gazing in. I see a man, the husband probably, staring back at me with a face completely barren of any emotion. I had never seen a face of such devoid feeling before. I still haven't. Of course, I get startled and I take a step back. I chuckle and I smile at the guy, but he doesn't smile back. Instead, while remaining completely emotionless, he draws a pistol up to his head that he was holding in his hand and proceeds to blow his brains out without ever breaking eye contact right in front of me while I'm staring at him. In utter shock, I gasp and I let out the smallest scream as I step back in fear. Only, I stepped back a little too much and fell off the scaffolding. Alerted by the gunshot, my uncle looked up in just enough time to see me fall off the scaffolding from the 3rd story. I was lucky enough to land in a bush and only suffer a broken ankle and a few scratches. The biggest wounds happened mentally. I had to go to counseling for so long. It's been years since then, but I still remember that man's face. I've never forgotten it. It will always be burned in the back of my head. I know why. Looking back, his face was so devoid of emotion, because he never felt any emotion at all. He literally didn't care about what he was doing. As it turns out, the man was seriously depressed and facing marital issues with the wife. Combined with too many drunk whiskey nights and facing writer's block, I guess he just decided he couldn't take it anymore. His wife moved out of the house shortly, and we never finished that job. To this day, that house is abandoned, and I try not to drive down that road. I'm scared that if I do, and I happen to pass the backyard, I'll see that man staring back at me from that window, cold and emotionless. There are some wonderful things about being young, poor, and in love. Sadly, this is about none of those things. When I was 22, I decided to move in with my equally poor boyfriend. Unfortunately, poor plus poor still equals mostly poor. But not so destitute that we couldn't afford an apartment in a college town. We happily moved into our one little bedroom, 1st floor apartment. Sure, it had problems. The lead-based paint was so thick we were sure we could survive a nuclear attack. The bathroom didn't have a vent. Instead, it had a window in the shower. And the appliances, from time to time, were from my grandmother, but it was home. Our home. We loved it. My boyfriend worked the graveyard shift and I worked days, so we spent a lot of time apart. That meant that when we were together, we enjoyed the simple things in life. Over time, when I was waking up and taking my morning shower, my boyfriend, who was just getting home, realized that he could come up to our open shower window and scare me. I always caught him. It was good and fun, and we laughed. Eventually, I started to notice a log standing upright outside of that window. I continually asked my boyfriend, why would he need that? You were already tall enough. He'd claimed that it wasn't his. He didn't know where it came from, and he would just move it back away when I went outside to show him. But yet, every few days, it would just move right back to where it was. The guys who cared for the yard were there several times a week, so they must have been moving it back out of the way against the building. Finally, before the snow fell, the yard workers cleared away all the yard debris, and we went on in peaceful oblivion. Time went on and our lease was up, but there was a great special at our cheap apartment complex. We could now rent 2 bedrooms, even cheaper than our 1 bedroom. We happily signed the new lease. The only real problem was that our 1-bedroom apartment was on a nice suburban street facing the houses, so we never really noticed how bad our new neighborhood was. We moved to the other end of the community, behind an abandoned strip mall. Our front yard consisted of a dark alley and some dumpsters behind a recently vacated Chinese buffet where a lot of stray cats seemed to live. None of this mattered in our dimly lit front yard, though. Our apartment was super cheap and huge, so what more could we ask for? That year, we were so happy that my boyfriend went to buy me a ring on Valentine's Day. Being young and giddy in love, he wasn't able to keep the secret, and I told him yes before he could even ask me the question. He didn't have a lot of money, so he bought a ring with the help of my friend's father, who owned a jewelry store. He got a good price with it, but with the drop in price, so comes a drop in attention to detail. I was devastated when He brought home the ring, along with our wedding band set, just to find out that someone had mistaken my very tiny 4 ring size with a 12. The rings were made for monster hands. What a terrible way to start our engagement. Clearly they needed to go back, so he put them in his glove box. But then, a snowstorm prevented him from taking them back that day. The next day, he went into his car to find that it had been broken into. Nothing had been taken, except one thing: the rings from the glove box. We never did have the money to replace them. We personally went to every single pawn shop in the area, and everybody said they hadn't seen anything at all. I began to be jealous anytime I'd see a woman with large fingers wearing a silver ring. I kept telling myself that her boyfriend stole my ring. Winter passed and summer came. With the summer came the warm breezes and the fresh air through our open windows. What the summer didn't bring us, though, was more money. Not for us, and not for the city. We even lost our phone service for non-payment, but it really didn't matter. The only people we talked to were each other anyway. But meanwhile, the city cut police and even closed a few stations, most of them in our neighborhood. It didn't really matter, though. Summer days are long, and our dingy little corner of the community wasn't at all intimidating in the daylight. One night, my husband-to-be turned in for the night early, so I decided that after a very long day, what I really needed was a nice soak in the bath. I walked into the bathroom and began to run my water, adding the bath salts in the bubble bath. I opened the window for that nice summer breeze and took off my clothes, dumped them in a pile by the open bathroom door, and hopped into the bath. I had grabbed my laptop to set on the closed toilet seat so I could relax in the tub with a movie. This would be at least 2 hours of just pure bliss. Nothing beats a long soak in my book. Turned the volume up on my laptop and relaxed the hours away with one movie and then another. What must have been a solid 4 hours later, I pulled the plug on the drain, and I sat while the water swirled away. I slowly stood up and stretched and dried off, with the now cool night air hitting my face through the window. I figured I'd just leave that open though, since the apartment could use some airing out. I stepped out of the tub and across the bathroom. I didn't bother to move my pile of clothes, instead stepping around them in a manner to get out of the partially opened bathroom door. But this move put me back looking into the bathroom, and right out the window, I saw a tall man. At first, I was startled, but then quickly realized it was just my fiancé playing a trick on me again like he used to do at our old apartment. But then I saw his eyes, up too high in the window, and everything in my head began to swim. It all became a blur. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, I could only stand there, naked, and stare. Then, everything came into startling detail. He was standing up on something so high up that you could see even his full torso in the window. Everything happened in a split second after I saw him. I was frozen to the spot. I noticed that he was wearing a silver ring. My silver ring. I was freaking out. I made a mental note of ways to identify him as I finally unfroze and ran into the bedroom. "There's a man outside my bathroom window," I said so fast, my fiancé couldn't even understand as he woke up. "What?" he asked. I repeated, "There's a man outside the bathroom window. He's been watching me. Make him go away, please." I was finally in hysterics as everything sunk in. That man could have been there, hovering over me for hours. The only thing separating us was a thin screen. I just kept covering myself with blankets and telling my fiancé, "Make him go away. Make him go away. Make him go away. Make him go away." By the time my fiancé woke up and actually went to check on the situation, nobody was even around. There was only a log, standing upright like a step outside our bathroom window. The same log. In the aftermath, we filed a police report, but we had no phones to call, so we had to drive a good 20 minutes away to do so. Then they didn't even have enough forces to do anything about the situation anyway. We had no evidence, no proof. We didn't have the money to break our lease. Instead, we spent the rest of that year living in fear. I covered every window with black contact paper. I wedged boards into every window so that they couldn't be opened, and that bathroom window, never opened it ever again. I never left the house without pepper spray after that. I never left after dark, but for most of the year, most nights, I'd hear a faint noise outside of our bedroom window, which was next to our bathroom. In the morning, when my fiancé would check it out, there would be imprints in the ground. as if someone had just been standing there. I wish I could say this was just a story. I wish I could say that. But truth is, the last 3 years of my life has been this, and I still can't sleep at night. I've been a police officer for 10 years. A few weeks ago, I found my niece's face on a missing poster. The date on it was the day I found it. I started my shift just like any other, with a cup of coffee. 10 years on the job, caffeine's basically part of the uniform. Get to work, throw on the uniform, grab the keys to my sector car, get the coffee flowing through my veins as fast as possible. My routine rarely strays. I stop at the same coffee shop 5 minutes from the precinct. They know my name, they know my order. I could walk in half asleep and still leave with exactly what I need. While I waited at the counter, my eyes drifted over to the corkboard near the door. The one layered with half-torn flyers and yellowed business cards. Landscapers looking for work, a babysitter trying to pick up extra hours, a dog walker for people too lazy or too busy to do it themselves. But just as my name was called, something new caught my eye. A missing poster. I don't ever remember seeing one there before. Maybe I never paid attention. I grabbed my coffee and stepped toward the board. I took a closer look, tugging the paper free from the thumbtack. The photo stopped me cold. It wasn't a blurry security image or a kid who looked kind of familiar. It was my niece, and her school photo. The same one that my sister keeps on the fridge. The same one that I carry in my wallet. Above the picture, bold black letters. Missing. Last seen. The date written there was the same day that I was standing in that coffee shop holding it. I didn't have time to be confused. My hands were already patting my pockets, searching for my phone. When I realized it was still in the car, I ran, shoulder-checking the door on my way out, nearly spilling someone's latte as I pushed past. No missed calls, no voicemails, no texts. So I hit my sister's number. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. Kept calling the entire drive over. Each ring felt longer than the last. I pulled up hard in front of her house, tires scraping against the curb. My niece's scooter was still on the porch from the night before, lying on its side. I rang the bell, then knocked, then called her name. The door flew open. My sister stood there, hair wet, bathrobe disheveled, eyes wide like she'd just run from the shower. For a second, she just stared at me, confused, trying to place why I was there. Then she saw the crumpled flyer from my hand, and all the color drained from her face instantly. "What happened?" she whispered. I stepped inside. She knew something was wrong before I even said a word. I held out the paper. "Look at this." Her eyes went wide. For a second, she couldn't breathe. "What the heck is this? She's fine. She's at school." "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I saw her get on the bus just like every morning." "Call the school," I said. "Now." "You're scaring me. Why shouldn't she be there?" "Just call." She grabbed her phone with shaking hands. I turned away, trying to keep my head clear. I needed to radio this in, tell a supervisor, do something. There was no chance I could finish my shift without knowing that she was safe. I walked into the kitchen, trying to gather my thoughts, mind racing. But the fridge caught my eye. The picture, her school photo, the one that I had grown accustomed to seeing, was gone. The same one I saw on the missing poster. I ran back to the living room. My sister was standing still, and the phone slipped from her hand. It hit the floor and bounced once against her bare foot. Tears welled in her eyes. "She never made it," she whispered. I called my supervisor and explained the situation. I told him that we had a missing juvenile. Told him about the missing poster I found. He assured me that all hands would be on deck and told me to wait there so my sister and I could give statements when the other officers and detectives arrived. Even though my sister was distraught, we still needed answers. I asked her about the missing photo from the fridge. She looked confused. "What? I never took that photo down. Why ever would I?" The pit that was already in my stomach felt like it was spreading throughout the rest of my body. I told my sister not to move, and I stood up slowly. I took the gun from my holster, and I began to clear the house. Something hung over the place. I couldn't put words into it. It didn't feel right. The last room to check was my niece's. I opened the door and I stepped inside, ready to confront anyone or anything I saw. Her room was always a disaster. Clothes on the floor, toys everywhere, half-finished drawings on the desk. But now it was spotless. Bed made with perfect corners. Toys put away in every bin that they belonged in. No clothes on the floor, not even dust on the dresser. I called for my sister. She came to the doorway and froze. "Did you clean this? Did she clean this?" I asked. "No." Her voice was flat, empty, nothing. Then she broke down crying. The first unit showed up in less than 10 minutes after I called it in. The blue lights rolled across the front of the house, painting the walls in blue light. 2 uniforms came through the door, calm but moving fast. One of them knew me. He didn't even say anything, just gave a small nod that seemed to say, "We got it from here." I holstered my weapon and stepped back into the kitchen. The energy drained out of me all at once. I could feel the weight of the gun pulling at my belt, the sweat drying cold under my vest. A detective arrived next, followed by some crime scene techs. They moved quietly, smoothly, professional. My sister sat at the table with a blanket over her shoulders, answering the same questions again, and again. I tried to focus on the facts for the statement. Time, location, who found what, but my mind just kept jumping back to that room. One of the techs brushed powder over the door frame and then over the dresser. Nothing but smudges. He went to the window next, and after a minute, he called the detective over. They had found prints on the inside glass, small ones, too small to be mine, but too defined to be old. Outside, the radios crackled. More units canvassing the neighborhood, checking the bus stops, talking to everyone awake. I stood by the front window watching the reflection of red and blue poles across the street. And then a voice came over the radio. "Dispatch, we've got something at the bus stop. Another poster, different photo, same handwriting." The detective looked at me. "Stay here," he said quietly, and he headed for the door. I watched him leave down the road, but I wasn't about to just stand there, so I followed. When we got there, we were shown a photo. The photo seemed to be taken that morning. The photo depicted my niece standing at the bus stop, backpack on, head turned over to the street. My detective asked, "You take this?" I didn't answer, because we both knew that I hadn't. The detective kept the photo sealed as an evidence sleeve. He told me to go home, get some rest, let them handle the canvas. I nodded, but we both knew that I wasn't going to sleep. My sister needed me. My niece needed me. I walked back to the house to tell my sister what we'd seen. Her world just kept crashing down on her. She shouldn't be alone. I convinced her to grab a few things and come stay with me until we figured this out. With no other choice, she agreed. We stopped by the precinct to pick up my personal car. Really no words between us. But then I looked over at her. I said, "We're gonna find her. I'm going to find her." No response. She just stared out the window. When we pulled into my driveway, I got out first and grabbed her bag from the back seat. The porch light flickered once as we walked up. Something was stuck to the front door. Even before I read it, even before I looked at it, I knew what it was. Another missing poster. Another different photo. It was from my birthday, my niece hugging me, both of us smiling at the camera. A picture that only I had. A picture that was in my living room. The detectives came to sweep the house. The door frame showed no forced entry, no prints. The birthday photo was gone. That night, sleep never came. My sister was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the TV still playing from where we left it. The volume was low, a soft hum under the eerie silence. I checked the doors twice, then a third time, every lock, every window. When I walked back into the living room, my sister had finally drifted off, exhaustion winning over her panic. I went to grab another blanket for her. That's when I noticed the empty space on the wall. I couldn't believe someone had been in my house. I couldn't believe any of this was happening. But then I heard it. A faint whirring sound from down the hall. I followed it to my office. The sound grew louder, steadily. When I opened the door, the printer on my desk was running, pages spilling onto the floor. I stepped closer and picked one of them up. A missing poster. Same format, same bold letters. Each one a different photo of my niece.